Yeah, but the sad thing about our generation is that 30% of grandparents are called or referred to as remote. Remote means that they really don't get involved in their grandkids' lives. You know, they go, they may show up for a birthday party, or they may catch them at Christmas, but they really don't get involved because we're saying our kids will take care of them. I got my own life to live. But when you think about that, as grandparents, what has caused this? Well, many times we cause this ourselves.
Welcome to Old Guy Talks to Me, a podcast dedicated to helping guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. Ladies, if you want to know what your guy is thinking, this podcast is for women too. Each week, a special guest helps you create that life you've imagined. We talk anti-aging medicine, personal growth, relationships and hot sex. Yeah, you hear me, getting laid more frequently. Other guy vices, and topics that many don't want to talk about but need to. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be old. Don't want to miss anything? Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to go to www.thestandard.academy/magazine and grab a free copy of our new digital magazine, The Standard Academy, where we talk about erogenous zones, growing hair back, and other things that will help you create that kick-ass life. Now get ready to listen up and share with friends.
This is Orest, the official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com, a podcast dedicated to helping older guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. That's right, those that they love. And, part of that is growing up or not growing up and being a boomer. And there's all sorts of, there's also societal ramifications. And maybe we'll get into that about boomer. And there's a term around that I hear a lot of younger people use called boomer remover. I don't know if you heard that, but it's out there. But today our guest is Marc Joseph, and Marc, we're going to talk about his newest project, which his website is called www.babyboomer.org. And we're going to have that in the show notes, so you don't have to worry about writing it down, especially if you're listening to this in the car and crashing, and then, all sorts of stuff. So all that and his social media connections and everything else will be in the show notes, so you can look at it there. And Marc is an accomplished, highly instrumental, and ambitious top executive leader with 30 years of experience in delivering fiscal, strategic, and operational leadership in challenging situations. Skillful in launching sales and marketing programs, generating record-setting revenues with expertise in presentation, negotiation, and communication skills, as well as adept at analyzing market and competitive conditions and laying out a product vision that is differentiated and delivers unique, value-based, on-demand customer services for e-commerce sales, for business to business, for retail merchandising. And Marc worked with venture capital and private equity firms. And Arianna Huffington had read his book and then asked him to become a contributor to the Huffington Post. And Marc has written a number of books, the most recent being a new children's book, I Don't Want to Turn 3, under his pen name, Gramps Jeffrey. And now he and his business partner are taking on the joys and challenges facing baby boomers, which I am. So I'm gonna ask you. I should have looked this up before we got on this call. What's the age range? What's the years for baby boomers roughly?
Baby boomers are from 1946 to 1964. There's 18 years of us.
Oh my gosh! And those were days where families were really propagating. That's a nice way of saying something else.
You got to kind of take a look at what created this whole baby boomer generation. Our parents, I think our parents are the greatest generation ever. They went through the Depression. They went through World War II. They saved the world for end democracy. So they came back, very conservative group, but a very focused group. And one of their focuses was to create the baby boomer generation.
Yeah. And some of us were incredibly spoiled, overindulged in other things, and others became okay. So Marc, babyboomer.org. What caused you, what motivated you to create this site?
Well, you take a look at us baby boomers. I mean, we are a very diverse generation. I mean, but every generation is diverse. Our parents' generation was very diverse. Our kids' generation is very diverse. You know, we're all divided over politics. We're all divided over religion. We're all divided. There's lots of things that separate us. But that's true of every generation. But the one thing the baby boomers have in common is a shared experience. All right, when you think about it, you know, those 18 years from 1946 to 1964, I mean, all kinds of things happened that we as a baby boomer generation have shared. You know, the Kennedys, both of the Kennedys were assassinated. Martin Luther King was assassinated. We landed on the moon. You know, all this birth control became widespread during our growing up years. Vietnam, both good and bad. I mean, that happened, you know, as well as Kent State, you know, where we lost 4 of our people. There were riots in the streets in the late 60s for us. You know, we went through Watergate. We have all these things, but also think about it, all the music that we do and we have as a shared generation. We have Elvis and the Beatles and the Association, the Beach Boys and the Three Dog Night and the Supremes. You know, we got all that great music that we all kind of relate to. You know, we've got all the wonderful movies that were made: Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Jaws, any really Spielberg movies, Animal House, you know, Star Wars, The Godfather. You know,
so Mark, let me ask you. Hey, when was the last time you saw Animal House?
You know, interestingly enough, I saw about 5 years ago.
You know, I saw it because my kids were going to college, my 2 daughters, and I said, well, let's just kind of, and I'm looking at that movie, Animal House, and I'll tell you, you couldn't make that movie today.
Right, exactly.
You cannot. I mean, it was hilarious. I actually lived in a place like that. Not necessarily it's a party, but actually the physical facility like that. It was a dental fraternity house in Indianapolis. But you could not make that movie today. You could not. It's hilarious, but you could not make that movie today, or else you would be just tarred and feathered.
Exactly. And then, you know, that's all of our shared experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, different than our kids' experience.
Yeah. So yeah. So what do you know, it's an interesting time to be a boomer. And part of it has to do with the longevity. I've had several guests on my podcast talk about longevity, and we were kind of in some ways programmed that it reminds me of Blade Runner, where the power goes out, right? That critical scene at the just before he's about ready to kill Harrison Ford, and the power goes out. That basically, you know, our expiration dates were supposed to be kind of like maybe 70, 80s, but people are talking about living to, and Elizabeth Yurt, the orthopedic functional medicine doctor I spoke about, you know, she's talking about living life till 120. And not just the length, but the quality of it. How does that come into a factor in terms of boomers? Because, like I said, I'll be 70 here in a few weeks, and I'm not feeling 70. And my wife just made a grin when I said this, because on the phone with someone. I said, "Oh yeah, you know, we're talking about living till 120," and she goes like, "Oh my God, another 50 years with you."
I think the most startling number that I've come across about us baby boomers is that 41% of small businesses are still owned by baby boomers. That's 12 million businesses here in the US that we are still owning. So, you know, when you take a look at us in our 60s and our 70s and 80s, you know, why are we still owning businesses? But we do. You know, and so when you think about that as a number, you know, I guess we are optimistic 41% of small businesses are still owned by us. We haven't passed them on yet. We haven't sold them yet. So when that time comes, it should be great for our younger generation. That says a lot to us as a baby boomer generation. We've got a lot of optimism. We're still doing business.
Well, I think that, one of the things that keeps people from, even though they're getting old, keeps them from acting old, is having purpose in life. And I'm sure there's several studies. I think one that was done by one of the major oil companies, that people, men especially, this wasn't true. Actually, it wasn't true for women. It was actually it was true for men. That men who retired at an early age died at an earlier age. And a lot of it is, I see that, men that were once vigorous, and all of a sudden they retire and they've got nothing to do and they dwindle. One of the most unhappy persons I know is a man who was very, very successful. He had a business, a retail business that was hugely successful, and it was in the golfing space. And he ended up selling it, made a lot of money, and he played golf every day. And he was one of the most unhappy people I ever met.
Yeah, that is one reason why we're putting this babyboomer.org together. Just so many things that we can do in activity. When you think about how many of us are authored books, we can do book reviews that we look at, newsletters, blogs, retirement coaches. We've got all kinds of things that are going on, that we need to share, sites for the older adults, dating, that's a whole different thing for our generation now. Many of our spouses may have died, all of a sudden, here we are, baby boomers, figuring out how to go out and back and date, so we'll make sure that they'll be fine for that. Fitness. Much thing you talked about. We got to stay in shape. Even if we're retired, we got to get out there. We got to make sure we're moving around. One of my favorite parts of our site that's going to evolve is our bucket list. Okay, what have we done? What do we want to do? Like in my case, on my bucket list, I'm finally going to finish my bucket list. One of my bucket lists next month. I've got 4 more states I have not been in, and my wife and I are going to the Northeast to hit them.
So what states are there?
It's Maine and Connecticut and Rhode Island and New Hampshire.
Okay, so they're all nice and close.
Yeah, exactly. So once we've done that, boom, I've got my bucket list done, and then I'll start my next bucket list, which is to go to all the national parks. So we all have our bucket lists. So we're going to share those kinds of things. We can do this. But it's interesting. There's all kinds of sports we're into now. Pickleball. I mean, how many of your friends play pickleball? It's crazy.
Apparently, it's the fastest growing sport in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, where we go, where we have it, there's a line. It's tough to get on. But you got, I got the billiards. All of a sudden, I'm seeing all of my old friends that are playing pool. That's their new hobby that they're doing. That. So, there's all kinds of the bridge, the bingo, all the kinds of things that we've got, travel, investments. That's what this site's all about. And that's why we pulled it together, because we feel that this common shared experience of baby boomers, there's 70 million baby boomers in the U.S. There's a lot of us. We hold 51% of the wealth here in the U.S. So it's we think that this is a great place for everybody to gather.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's an interesting site. One of the things that I notice, and this is kind of a frustration for me a little bit because of the things that I do, is that people after a certain age are very reluctant to progress and experiment. They kind of like settle in, and they settle for a life that is in deterioration. Because I don't believe there's anything like status quo. I don't think you're either getting better or you're worse. Now, there's some obvious things about aging that exist and that occur, but a lot of times people just kind of settle in, and they kind of have they're kind of coasting, and they're not really working on creating a better version of themselves after a certain age, or at a certain, I don't know if it's a certain age, but it's more so an attitude about where they are in their life.
I think that's true, but think about how many of us are grandparents, right?
Mhm.
What kind of purpose is that? How should we be involved with being a grandparent?
Sure.
The average person when they become a grandparent, for a female, it's 50 years old. So that's the average in the US. For a male, it's 52 years old to become a grandparent. So when you think about that, what are we supposed to be doing at our age? Should we get involved with our younger kids? The many of the baby boomers that I know say, "Hey, I raised great kids. Let them take care of the grandkids. I got my own thing to do. I got to go play some pickleball." Do that. But the sad thing about our generation is that 30% of grandparents are called or referred to as remote. Remote means that they really don't get involved in the grandkids' lives. They may show up for a birthday party, or they may catch them at Christmas, but they really don't get involved because we're saying our kids will take care of them. I got my own life to live. But when you think about that, as grandparents, what has caused this? Well, many times we cause this ourselves. Many times our kids may not marry the spouse that we like, and so all of a sudden we're not involved in their lives. There's all kinds of things that we do, baby boomers, that make our kids mad. We give them unsolicited advice, so all of a sudden they push us away. We may show up at their house unannounced. All of a sudden they say, "Hey, come on, let me raise my kids." So when you think about it, one out of every three of us, one out of every three baby boomers, they just don't get involved in the raising their kids. I mean, that would be the great thing to do. And again, I'm always exploring what causes us not to get involved. Well, we undermine the parents' authority, so our kids' authority through their grandkids. What they're teaching, we question the family structure. We try to play favorites with our grandchildren, and we manipulate the siblings. Now, we as grandparents, we all have favorite grandkids, but you just can't say it out loud. You can't tell anybody. It's you got to keep it to yourself. Otherwise, you're not involved in that. We try to influence kids because of transaction. We give money, gifts, take them on vacation, those kinds of things. We, even with all our experience, don't many times show empathy for little kids, for the younger kids growing up. So we got to do that. It's very crucial for these kids. Many times grandparents demand grandchildren's respect or comply, and they don't want to do that. So we step back and say, okay, what do we do? Are we getting older? One of the major influences we as a baby boomer generation can do is get involved in raising this newest generation. And the reason I say that is, these kids 1 to 10 years old, and again, I think they're going to be the best generation this country's ever produced, much better than we ever were, they come right out of the womb and they're on the internet. They've got electronics. I didn't get on the internet till I was 40 years old. Here you got these little kids growing up and being on the internet, understanding these kinds of things. We as grandparents need to step in and help offset all this great information they're getting with what is real life and the experiences of real life. So if any of your grandparents are just kind of saying, "Hey, I don't want to do it," get involved in. Be the elder, be the teacher.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that we have to offer is in some ways mentoring, and doing it consciously, understanding there's a difference between mentoring and telling people what to do. And part of it is the approach, though. I will say there are times that I've just said, like after mentoring, they go like, "Okay, this is really what you need to do. Now you can do it or not do it. That doesn't, to be real honest, it's not going to affect the quality of my life. But I think that you will find that if you do this, it'll work really well." But that's most of the time. At least that's not the approach that we take. We take an approach of mentoring and talking, especially with our kids. We're far away from, according to both our daughters, we're far away from having any grandkids. But we work with them to actually talk through scenarios so that we're not just talking about that one thing, but we're actually introducing a system to deal with things that they can do on their own when that time comes that they don't need, that we're not going to be there, or they can do with things on their own. But we help by talking through the process rather than just coming right straight to the thing. Okay, this is what you got to do. We really kind of try talking, developing through the cognitive process of analyzing the problem, the challenge, and understanding what the possible solutions are, and also discussing consequences, both intended and unintended, that may occur, and to be prepared for the unintended, because you can't foresee all the unintended consequences, which is really the biggest thing is like, oh, you think you're going to do this, blah, 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 and you're like, all of a sudden you go like, oh my God, what happened? I had this great idea. I thought it was going to turn out great. Like, oh, nope.
Do you need accountability? Are you looking to change the course of your life but have failed to keep on track? Too often we take in information and fail to act. Do you need an accountability program to stay the course? Then go to www.thestandard.academy and find out about my accountability program that goes with my course that helps you find out what you want, why you want it, and how to get it. The accountability program keeps you on track to get results.
So on this site that you have, take us through some of the things that you have on the site in terms of what kind of features and what kind of things that you are basically providing to people that will be coming on the site.
Well, the main part of the site is going to be news. Okay, it's going to be news on everything that baby boomers are worried about, whether it's financial news or social news. And so it's going to be all news updated every day with articles that are based really for the baby boomer generation and what we all need to know. But there's going to be a whole travel section. A lot of us are traveling now, so it's going to be a great section just for understanding where to go, how to go, and things like that. Entertainment. There's going to be everything on the music that we were just talking about, on the books that we were talking about, on the movies we were talking about. There's going to be a whole section just for entertainment, and healthy living. That's key to us. We probably think about it more in our lives now than we ever did. How do we stay alive? How do we stay healthy? How do we stay moving? So there's going to be all kinds of stuff with that. Money, whether it's how to keep it, how to find it, how to improve it, everything involved with taxes and all that. So we all need to know what's going on, in our lives with our money, because we're on Social Security or we're taking IRA. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we've got to worry about there. Beauty, motivational, all that, and for what year where you were born is going to tell you what's going on, what happened then, what's going to happen now. So there's just so many shared experiences and information that we can have. We want to improve the quality of life of us baby boomers, and the quality of life, as we well know, is all done with it helps with information. And now that we've got this great internet, which we didn't have when we were growing up, this is one place where you get all that great information to help you make better decisions. And we also want to use the baby boomers to help younger generations. So even though it's geared towards baby boomers, it's also for the younger generation to kind of learn things about us, or for us to share things with them. So anybody can come to the site, and I urge any of your listeners to go ahead and sign up now. The site's up now. We're going to launch it really next month, but it's available now to go and see how it's progressing every day, and sign up, because again, it's free to sign up. So we can do that. But we want to. And then one thing that you mentioned is very important to us is using baby boomers to pay it forward as knowledgeable elders. We got so much. When you think about it, every decade we get smarter and smarter, and the reason we get smarter is because we make a lot more mistakes, and so that's how we learn. We learn from our mistakes, and as we get older, we get better and smarter and more wisdom. So we want to make sure that we can pass that on as elders to all these other generations. So we really want to turn it into when you walk away from the site, you want to say, thanks, Boomer. You've helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, sometimes there's some tension between boomers and other generations that exists. And I think it's important to what you're working on is to dissipate some of that tension. But it's there. You mentioned the business ownership thing, which is an interesting, interesting comment, because there's a term called boomer remover. And I did a podcast with a woman about that. And it's basically, there's kind of like get out of the way, it's my turn. And it's kind of like, no. And by the way, it's not cutting slices of the pie. You can grow your own pie. It's really just because I'm in business doesn't mean you can't get into business. But it's an interesting concept in terms of like that, because we are living longer, that we're in the way. And to a certain extent that may be true, but I think a lot of times though, it's a matter of like, well, go ahead and create something. Go ahead and create something that is going to satisfy you. Don't expect to rely on me. There's a certain thing, and we've done this with our kids, is that a lot of parents want to set their kids up, and I understand that, and yes, we do want to do that. At the same time, our biggest focus between my wife and myself was to create two independent young women that, if we were to be swept off the face of the earth, they're going to do fine. They're not, they're in their mid and early 20s. They don't need us at this point. They're both doing incredibly well, got careers, but they are independent, and they really don't need us.
If we're going to live to be 120, we don't really want to give it up yet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what am I going to do for 50 years?
Yeah. But I mean, that is your legacy, teaching your daughters to be independent. I mean, that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
But so that's something that we all have to work on, is how do we leave that legacy to do this with these kids?
Yeah. Well, Mark, I have to tell you though, we got really lucky with kids because my wife and I did not have us as kids. We had these really, actually very, how should I say, very responsible children who, I don't know, they came out of the womb like that. And basically, we've told both our daughters that they're screwed because it skips a generation.
Well, the other topic that you were talking about was, go open up your own business. If you're talking to your kids, I'll give you mine later, but you go open up your own. In my opinion, today is the best time in America's history to open up a business.
Oh, absolutely.
My first book that I wrote about was the Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart. And it's a business book. It's a step-by-step guide on how to open a business. It's how do you find your people? Where do you find your location? Where do you buy your products from, or make your own products? How do you market your business both on the internet, and how do you market your business now, in real life? And then the last chapter is how do you sell your business? It's the exit strategy. But again, going back to, it's the best time in this country's to open a business is, 20 years ago, and then we'll take the retailing, because that's what I was in. If you were to open up a retail store, you had to find a location, you had to buy inventory, you had to hire people, and then you had a limited market. If you're a small town, you had 100 people, a bigger town, maybe 1,000 people, but in today's world with the internet, you can start a business and reach thousands, if not millions of people, And that's the beauty of this internet. That's
Yeah.
the beauty of what we're doing, because now with very little investment, because you don't have to have a physical store, you can open up a business and sell all over the world. So
Yeah.
I would encourage our kids, open a business, do your own thing,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is the time.
Yeah. Fulfillment is just a few links in your website. That's really kind of an interesting thing. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned about selling businesses, and this is something actually for boomers, because you mentioned how many they have. A lot of times, especially businesses that have been in a lot of people talk about the third generation of a business, of a family business, and how that's usually when things fall apart. And we've seen that fairly often. And selling businesses is actually kind of a challenge, because there's a long runway. My wife sells middle market companies, basically anything that would sell from 5 to 150 million. And so she's in that field, and it's a there's lots of dynamics, because most of the time she's dealing with companies that have been started by a family member that has grown quite a bit, and it's time for and sometimes the kids not interested in the business or whatever, or maybe they're not able to handle the business for whatever reasons. But it's a challenge, and people need to, especially boomers, need to think about succession plans. How are they going to move on, not just in terms of giving the resources of the business, of the fruits of their labor, to their kids later on, but also in terms of long-term financial stability for themselves, because we are living a lot longer these days.
That's right. Good point.
Yeah. So yeah, because that's one of the things that my wife always asks, is like, when they start looking at their numbers, like, are you really ready to sell your business? Is this the time? Are you financially in a position to sell your business? Because all of a sudden, a lot of revenue that people kind of take for granted is all of a sudden gone.
Yeah, you talked about the successful businesses, but to think about a new business, 50% of them fail within the first 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be really careful if you're going to open a business. You got to say, why do these businesses fail? 40% of them fail because you don't have the right market or the right service or the right product.
Mm-hmm.
I learned early on, because I used to be a buyer for a department store, is you don't buy for yourself, you got to buy for your customers. So many times we all think we got the greatest things in sliced bread because we like it. Well, you got to really analyze the business and say, what do the people want? So, but that's why 40% fail, 30% fail because they just don't have enough cash. When you open up a business today, you've got to be able to say to yourself, let's assume I don't have sales for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
How much cash do I need to keep this thing going?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why 30% fail, is because they run out of cash. They don't have enough money to make the thing happen. And then another 25% fail because they can't put together the right team. They have bad communications. Many of us entrepreneurs, we think we know it all, but we don't. You've got to be able to surround yourself with people that are much smarter than you are. In my particular case, I really don't like accounting. If you stuck me in a room to do accounting for 8 hours a day, I would go nuts. So you got to find somebody who loves that kind of stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
if any of our kids are looking to start a business, or our grandkids are looking to start a business, we got to have all those things in mind, because obviously we don't want anybody to fail.
Yeah. And the flip side of that is that a number of people have started businesses, failed, started businesses, failed, and started businesses, and have been successful, because there is a learning curve to being an entrepreneur. There's not everyone is out of the box right away successful. And I think part, who was it? Was telling me the story, I can't remember, about Jeff Bezos and Amazon, and how he started. And there was another company that was incredibly well funded, and he started. I think he kept his operations initially in his basement or something like that. Working on cheap folding tables and this and that. And the other company, bought really fancy furniture and, it's a nice high-rise building and everything else, and just burned through their cash. And, they're not even, nobody even remembers their name. But you gotta be realistic about where you are in the business cycle in terms of when, especially in startup, and you mentioned about running out of cash. That's a huge thing.
Well, it goes back to one of our original conversations that we're the elders, and the reason we got so smart is because we failed so many times.
Yeah.
And so that's why many of these entrepreneurs have been able to make it on the second, third, fourth time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, believe me, when I was in private practice, I've lived through 3 recessions, practiced through 3 recessions. And I remember going and using credit cards so I could make payroll.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't pleasant. And I remember seeing the utility disconnect notice on my door too. All that stuff. So, you up and down. There are times that you are flush and there are times that you are, on the brink. And I know the last recession that we had that started in 2007, people say it started in 2008, but actually, we felt it right away. I can tell you exactly October 2007. That was a real challenging time. And if you weren't prepared for it, a lot of businesses never recovered, just like a lot of businesses never recovered from the COVID shutdown. There are businesses that will never come back. Dreams have been slashed.
Yeah, you just gave me a pain in my head when you said about payroll. I remember many Fridays where I couldn't sleep the night before because I was worried about making payroll.
Oh yeah,
that is because you're affecting so many families. It's not just yours now. It's when you're an entrepreneur, you got to worry about making payroll, and so that takes a lot of guts.
Yeah, no, it's a big responsibility, and people are like, oh, you got his boss, you can do anything you want. It's like, yeah. I'll admit there's a certain amount of freedom about being the boss and being in. I've been self-employed for a long time, coming up to now 40 years. At the same time, there's a lot of responsibility associated with it.
Absolutely.
And especially if you're in a small business, if something breaks, most of the time you're fixing it. You end up fixing it. So I want to go back. Back to your baby boomer. What would you say are the 3 biggest things that baby boomers can do to really, improve the quality of their life? Or if you had to say, like, okay, these are the 3 things I think you need to do to make sure that you have a great path to a great life.
I think the number one thing is stop being so selfish and thinking of yourself and start thinking of those around you. Never lose sight that you are a mentor now. I mean, it's hard for us all to place ourselves as mentors. I still picture myself being 40, but it ain't the truth anymore. So we have got to make sure that how selfish we may be, that we have got to start sharing our life lessons with those around us, and especially those in our family, whether it's our children or our children's children. That's number one. So that's my first choice, is make sure you step out of your comfort zone and share your experiences. Number 2 is that we got to stay in shape. It's very easy to sit in front of the television and use the remote, and that's how you do your life. Get out there, play pickleball, go fishing, do all kinds of sports. At the same time, you can take your grandkids and do it with them too. Teach them, teach them how to bowl, teach them how to play pool. That's what we've got to do. So I would say number 2 is we've got to stay in shape. We got to make sure that that's a priority of what we do. And number 3 is, we've got to forgive. If you think back on 60 and 70 and 80-year-olds, we may have been upset with a lot of people or a lot of actions, but life is too short. We've been talking about living longer, but this COVID-19 has wiped us out. where we maybe only be 16% of the population, 75% of the deaths were people that were 65 years and older from COVID. We've lost a lot of good friends during this pandemic. The average lifespan since COVID started now is 2 years less than it used to be. We got to get that back. And so forgive. Let's get to along a lot better. Can you imagine in this country if we got along a lot better? Where that could take us. And that's the example we've got to give these grandkids as they're growing up.
Yeah. I think it's real important, and share stuff, and mentoring does not always have to be serious, because sometimes it's fun stuff, and sometimes it's actually introducing vices. So I did tell you, Mark's going like, where is this going? So as many of you may know from my previous podcasts and pictures that are out there from me, I love having a cigar. I have a couple of cigars a week and on a regular basis. And so my youngest daughter, who had turned 21, she's a few years ago, she looked at me one day and she said, if I was a boy, you would have already taught me how to smoke a cigar. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I don't deny the obvious. Yes, that's probably true. If she was a boy, and then I of course I hid behind my wife, who didn't want me to teach her how to smoke a cigar. So that was a convenient. Okay, well, mom doesn't want you to. I'm glad to do it, but mom doesn't want you to do it. And then we started getting to think about, and we were talking like, a lot of deals get made in cigar bars. I don't know if you're a cigar smoker, Mark, at all, but there's a lot of business. It's as a business environment as a golf course can be in some situations. There's a lot of money being talked about in cigar bars. And so we're talking, and my daughter looked at me, and my wife goes, yeah, she's right. So I did teach my daughter how to smoke a cigar, how to go the whole process, the whole etiquette about how you actually cut, the different types of cuts, how do you toast a cigar before you actually light it, and the whole process. So I took her. Now she's not an avid cigar smoker like her dad is, but some of the mentoring is also kind of fun too.
Great story.
Yeah. So contributing, I think that used to be. Unfortunately, she's not a minor. Contributing to the delinquency of a minor. That used to be a crime too. Now I can apparently it's not, or we don't even know what the crimes are anymore. So that's kind of interesting. Well, Mark, I'm really looking forward to seeing how your site develops. I know that we're in the beginning stages, and I'm sure it'll grow, and you guys will be pivoting as you see things working and not working and all that stuff. And but I think right now, I mean, it's a great site with lots of things on there already, and more content to come. So congratulations, and what a great idea.
Oh, thank you. And again, I encourage everyone just to sign up. It's free. All we're going to do is be sharing all kinds of information that is needed by us baby boomers. Yeah. And so we're going to have the link to the site and any social media contacts and some other things in the program notes, so you can go in there and do sign up. That's right. Do sign up. All right. Mark, thank you. Hey, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right. This is Orest, the old guy from oldguytalkstome.com. And remember, it's all about creating a kick-ass life for yourself and those they love. And I want you to do a few things. I want you, first of all, to go to the standard.academy/magazine and get my copy of my free digital magazine. There's articles there that will change the course of your life, including one titled, "Why Are Men Pissing in Their Pants?" Talk about clickbait, huh? Yes, we do talk about that. And I want you also to do several things. I want you to subscribe, share, rate, and review. And if you give me a bad review, that's fine too. I love my trolls. especially if you're like rabid. You can just rabid lately a whole bunch of time. Give me a bad review. That'd be great. So that's all good. Remember, it's all about creating a kick-ass life for yourself and those you love. Until next time.
Thank you for joining Dr. Orest and his incredible guest. Like what you heard and learned? Then be sure to do 3 things. 1. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2. Share this with someone who may need to hear it. 3. Leave a review and rate this podcast. Opt in at www.thestandard.academy/magazine and get our free digital magazine with savings, articles, and deeper dives into cool controversy. Be the guy who takes action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want. Thank you again, and make it a great day.